39-year-old woman. Tonight, I went to see my boyfriend. He asked me to go pick up his medications. I had to go to a plaza just outside the city we live in. I absolutely hate going to this plaza after dark because the parking lot is super dark and it's surrounded by woods on one side. These woods are also where a murder took place and where a body was found. I had to park back near the woods. As I was walking towards my truck, I thought someone was following me, but I brushed it off thinking it was someone going to their car. When I got to my truck and got it unlocked, someone tried grabbing me. It was the person who was behind me. I'm quite short, being only 5'4" and around 134 pounds, but I am scrappy, so I did what I was always told to do. I started screaming and punching and kicking. The person ended up running off, but I don't know where they went. I got into my truck and locked it. I drove back to my boyfriend's home and called the local police from there. I explained to the officer who came to talk to me about what happened. I gave him a description of the person. He said that they would check it out and see if they can find the person. I live in a relatively safe area. This kind of stuff doesn't happen here often. So tonight I was almost kidnapped. So much for living in a safe area. I don't think the local police will find the person because I don't believe whoever it was from the area. This story is from the days when I used to live back home in Karachi, Pakistan. I've since moved to the UK. Back then, we used to live very close to a CID building, which is basically the Pakistani FBI. We were all unaware of this and always thought it was just an ordinary government building. That was until November 11, 2010. On that day, around the evening time, I was coming home from work and I thought it would be better to hit the gym because they had a sauna, and after being tired all day from work, it just sounded like a good idea. The gym was hardly 0.3 miles away, so I decided to walk to it. I changed quickly and then left for the gym. I'd hardly walked like 10 minutes and I was only 0.1 miles away from the gym when all of a sudden, for a nanosecond, I feel the ground is shaking. The next thing I heard is the loudest bang I've ever heard in my life, followed with a pressure kick into my chest. Now, to let you guys know, my ears started bleeding because the bang was so loud, and for the reference, the kick in the chest was as bad as Big Show wearing military boots and kicking you in the chest straight with full force. Next thing I know, I'm on the ground covering my ears because they're in agony and covered in dirt, trying to figure out what's happening. As I'm trying to grasp the situation at hand, I can see that all the car alarms have gone off. Anything that's been made of glass has been completely shattered. I'm still trying to figure out what has happened when I start smelling gunpowder, and as if someone is making a barbecue and is being burnt. I will always remember that smell, which was something horribly unsettling. Then I noticed the rocks and dust particles start landing on me in the surrounding area, which were covered with 1 to 1.5 inch long pieces of human skin and flesh. I'm in total disbelief that I have another human skin piece stuck to my arm. I brush up my clothes and arms, getting up and covering my ears, recovering from that pressure kick. As I move closer to a spot in the street where I'm hearing loads of people screaming and crying, I see a few 3 to 5 foot cracks between some walls of the building which have been destroyed by the shockwave of the bang. I see the gap between a wall and move into the area where I see the scene straight from a Hollywood movie, where people are crying, cars are on fire, and dead bodies on the ground. By this time, I'm thinking it's a bomb blast, and that's what happened. As I move closer, I see a 10-foot and 30-foot wide crater which had been filled with water, and the building, which was a CID building, is no longer standing. There are hundreds of people lying on the ground crying for help, as some of them don't even have legs or limbs, or some of them don't even have their complete bottom half of their body. I'm still in a state of shock looking around, and I see a woman crying and hitting herself because her husband, who was dead, was missing his legs and torso. I see a number of people without legs, their brains out, no limbs. One thing, which has still to this day haunted me, was the sight of an 18 to 20-year-old guy who was dead and lying on his chest to his floor with his neck turned upwards towards me. I can still remember him, dead, looking straight into my eyes. His feet were flipped the other way around. After the police and media arrived, I returned home as it got very crowded. Every day afterwards for a while, after I'd come home after dusk from work, I would see that 18 to 20-year-old boy standing and staring into my eyes as a ghost. I would often wake up screaming throughout the night and see the guy standing at my doorway just staring at me. For 2 to 3 weeks, I would see this guy regularly during midnight standing in my hallway, staring through my soul. I still remember the guy's face and the shockwave and the sound of the blast. P.S. To this day, even the slightest bang or even a loud music drop freaks me out sometimes, reminding me of that shockwave. I'm married, so sometimes I tell my wife that the bang just reminded me of the shockwave I witnessed in the accident. I don't tell her, but inside my heart, I pray secretly that God doesn't ever put anyone through that, even in their wildest dreams. When I was about 4 years old and my brother was 11, we stayed at my aunt's between moving houses. Her neighbor had a son that was my brother's age, so my brother used to go play with him on weekends. One day, my brother goes over after lunch. The dad opens the door and says the kids and their mom are out shopping, but invite him in to come in and have some juice and tell him about how the move is going. My brother goes in, has a drink and a chat, then comes back to my aunt's after no more than an hour. A few days later, the police are all over the place. Turns out that the dad murdered his wife and kids, and was in the middle of burying them in the back garden around the time my brother knocked. It's crazy to think what could have been different had my brother visited a couple hours before or caught that guy on an off day. This happened with my sister-in-law when she was about 11 or 12 years old. Her and her family lived in a trailer park. Just down the street was her bus stop for school. Each morning, she would see a man in his trailer taking pictures of her and her friends. It creeped her out, so she went to tell her mom, my mother-in-law, of what this guy was doing and how he would just stand in the window staring at them and taking pictures. So her mom calls the police to report him. The police didn't do anything. This went on for about another 2 weeks with no action from the police, to where now my sister-in-law is terrified to stand and wait for the school bus, and her mom had to call the police again. And lo and behold, the police find a wall covered in pictures of my sister-in-law, some of the other neighborhood little girls, and CP. Her and the other families watched from afar as this guy was cuffed up and being escorted to the police cruiser. Off the main road of a place I used to work at, a guy decided to climb under a bus to, quote-unquote, hitch a free ride. Well, the bus went over a speed bump and the guy fell and ended up getting caught on the back wheel. His body was dragged for 5 blocks before the bus driver realized what was happening. A police officer who came into our store regularly told us that the guy was still alive when they got to him, but died an hour later. He said that his whole back was scraped off, exposing his spine. I still remember driving down that road after the fact, where you could see a deep red blood stained trail going on for 5 blocks. It was absolutely horrifying. I'm a crime writer and once interviewed a woman who told me an unrelated horror story about something that happened to her as a little girl. When she was like 10 years old, she used to have trouble sleeping and imagined that there was a boogeyman living in her closet, staring at her during the night. Every night she would come down and tell her parents, and every night her father would tell her that the boogeyman didn't exist and that she should just go back to sleep. Well, this happened for several nights, and the father got tired of it eventually. So one night, he walked her back to her bedroom, turned on the light, and said, "I'll show you that there's no boogeyman." And he went to open the closet door. Except he felt something on the other side was holding it shut. He sent his daughter out of the room and forced the door open to find that there was a man inside. This man had been sneaking into their house every night to stand in the girl's closet and watch her, and who knows, maybe more. Her dad beat the ever-living shit out of that man, and that man was sent to prison. When I interviewed this woman, I looked him up online. He'd recently gotten out on parole and had skipped out on his weekly checks, and nobody knew where he was anymore. For people asking for the source, I googled his name for the first time in years, and the good news is he's back in prison again. Hey guys, just want to take a quick moment to say thank you for all the likes, comments, and subscribes. Really means a lot to me as a new YouTuber. If you enjoyed the video, please consider hitting that subscribe button and the notification bell, because I am planning on posting at least 100 videos this year and keeping an active pace. Although with all the support I've been seeing, I'm actually thinking of trying to hit 200 or 300 this year. Lastly, if you have a true scary story or a paranormal experience that you want me to read here in my channel, go ahead and write it and email it to me at drhans@gmail.com, along with a note of how you wish to be credited.